Right.
All right. Can you guys hear us? Yeah?
Hello.
Good. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Johan Stokking. This is Olivier Seller, but I'll let him do his own introduction.
So I am Olivier. I've been working on LoRa since the beginning. I was part of the founders of the technology with Nicolas Sorlin, François Hédé, François Sforza, and I've been with Semtech since the acquisition of the technology by Semtech almost 13 years ago. I'm really happy to be here, and we're going to talk about a little bit of history, and a little bit of also on the future, on the technical spec. So yeah, I am a technical guy. That's,
and what do you do now in Semtech?
So I'm involved with the LoRa Alliance as the TC Vice Chair, also leading one or two activities for the Alliance. And in Semtech, I keep on trying to improve the LoRa modulation, the LoRa demodulation, the new things we have like LRF-HSS, the satellite modulation. So that's, keep up on improving the physical layer and also the spec.
Yeah, so I work with Olivier also in the TC. So as Olivier says, he's vice chair of the technical committee. Can you explain a bit about maybe just an introduction of how do you see the ecosystem in general?
Yeah,
because you saw it from inventing a technology, and then LoRa Alliance came later.
Indeed, we started with just a modulation, just a point-to-point modulation, and then it became a networking system. But it's much more than that. How I see the LoRa Alliance, how I see this event today, is really like an innovation ecosystem. So an ecosystem where people need to work together. We need to build these things together because it's so complex that everyone needs to innovate at its own level. Everyone needs to do one or two things right, bring innovation, bring value, and that's why we really need an ecosystem with many different players. And even the users of the technology have to innovate. Most often they need to change the way they work to make the best use of the technology. So that's what we are. That's what the LoRa Alliance is. It's an innovation ecosystem. And it needs to be structured so that companies find their way, find their place, find the sweet spot of what they can bring, which value they can bring to the market. And somehow this is reflected in the technicalities of the spec. So sometimes it's deliberate, and sometimes it's maybe by accident. So maybe we can take some examples to make that clearer. So in the spec, we say that it is a spec to make an end device talk, join a network. Then, of course, there is a network operator in that story. There is a device maker. But then we say that a device is not directly connected to gateways, but it's only connected to one network. The gateways are somehow transparent. When we write that in the spec, it means it opens the space for community networks like TTN, then TTI. So this is really the spec structures the way the ecosystem can work. There are other examples of that. When we say there is a network server, of course, we create the job of network server operators. Again, TTN, TTI. When we say there is an application server, we tell that the application must be structured, the solution must be structured around the application. Therefore, there are solution providers or private networks that own their data and can use by themselves the data. So that's everything we write in the spec, everything we wrote in the spec adds implications, either deliberate or unexpected. So that's how I see the ecosystem. The spec is much more than a spec. It's also a way to structure how people or companies interact.
Yeah, And so back to what you said is that so we have then an ecosystem, and that means also we have the opportunity for players in the industry and in the ecosystem to specialize. So we have us, for example, specializing in the NS. We have an AS, we have a JS, but we also work with others. But I think people that are here and they are walking the floor and they see a lot of specialists, I think. Don't you think it's also a challenge for people new to this ecosystem that they see a lot of things that work and there are a lot of specialists, but it's hard to get started and they have to work with 5, 6 vendors? Do you think that is more a challenge, or do you think that's more an opportunity?
Well, it's a challenge to start with, of course, but you don't want to be locked in with a single vendor. So that's what an ecosystem is. It's competition.
Yeah.
So you have multiple vendors at every level. Semtech licensed the LoRa technology to STMicro so that we can compete, that nobody is locked with our chips. So we do need that competition for the best, and that's also a structure as an ecosystem. Semtech could have made the choice of being a focal actor and keep everything for itself. And we know that companies who tried that in the IoT didn't succeed. Really, the success of LoRaWAN is because we are an open ecosystem.
Yeah. So you mentioned spec a few times. Who here in the audience, just raise your hands, is when we say LoRaWAN specification, really knows what that is? Okay, so that's a few people. So can you tell a bit about what is the form of the spec? What is it actually?
So the form of the spec is really it's a text.
Yeah, it's a PDF file.
It's a PDF file, which is a little bit less than 100 pages, but we are trying to be a bit more helpful with developers that you mentioned in your previous question, because the LoRa Alliance know whenever we publish a spec, we also publish a reference implementation of the stack for the end device side, and we publish the certification program that goes with it. So it's really 3 things that the LoRa Alliance provides. It's a technical spec, an example of stack, which is also a golden spec, and a certification tool and a certification program to verify that the device is can be certified and is interoperable with any network server. So there's this link layer spec, but there is much more. So that's we number the specification with, and now our technical specification arrive at I think 13 or 14. So we have like 14 published specifications. So the first one was and is for the end device, the relation between the end device and the network server. But we have backend specification. We have 3 or 4 specifications related to multicast setup, firmware upgrade over the air, application packages support. We have, what else? Help me. We have a very good spec on QR codes. That's what you were about to say that.
Yeah.
So, and the ultimate goal of this, so the spec is then you print a QR code on a piece of paper that you stick on the device. But the real goal of that spec is that eventually, when you scan that QR code, you instantly provision the device on a network. So that's one touch, taking a photograph of that QR code, one touch provisioning, thanks to that QR code. That's one of the most important building elements for that goal, or version of plug and play.
Yeah. And so can you give a bit of history in what the LoRa Alliance published in? So there was a LoRaWAN specification 1.0, then a 1.01, then a 1.02, then a 1.1, then a 1.0.3.
1.03 and then 1.04.
Yeah. So can you give us a bit of context of what happened and how this came to be?
So so first of all, with time, the spec has grown bigger and bigger, mainly to make it clearer, to make it also simpler to interpret. It's very easy to let intentions unwritten in the spec. So sometimes the developers or the LNS providers had to make choices, had to interpret what the spec is telling. So we hope that it is no more possible, so that with version 104, everything is really clear and straightforward, and there is no room for interpretation. There's only room for different algorithms, for different performance, but not for interpretation of what interoperability needs to be. Then, version after version, we also separated elements from the spec. Best example is the regional parameters, which is the way to adjust for each region, for instance, Europe, USA, Canada, South America, where each region has its own rules for the ISM band. So we tailored one channel plan for each of these regions. And it used to be part of the spec. Now it's outside of the spec, and that's a way to spin that faster. So every time the regulation, imagine the regulation changes because we have new frequencies. That happens in Europe with the 915 or frequencies around 915 being open in most countries. Then we can very quickly spin a new channel plan that can make best use of that. Then we've added also features, for instance, Class B, Class C, or features that we've added with version 102, then 103, where it became stable. We're adding sometimes Mac commands. We're adding options mainly. But all versions are compatible with each other. Version 1.1 was a kind of a fork with the intention to improve security and to allow end-over roaming for public network to public network roaming. Experience shows that this spec is not so much used. So we do recommend to use the latest published spec, which is version 104.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's a bit of history. How about the LoRaWAN specification comes to be. We'll go into how the actual specification process goes last. But what's coming in the future? What is on the horizon?
So the LoRa Alliance is working on the spec. The LoRa Alliance is working on certification. The LoRa Alliance is working on the backend spec, what happens in the IT, in the core network. And we are also working on expanding markets, so at different layers. And please have a look at the LoRa Alliance roadmap, which is a single page which explains for each of these lines what's going on in details. We don't have time here to list them all. But we also work on the regulatory level, as we explained with the regional parameters, but we also work to lobby to have more spectrum, to defend the spectrum that we have already. So what's coming is your question. So on each of these, something is coming. So for instance, on the link layer spec, so the LoRaWAN, it's going to be called LoRaWAN version 1.2. The main thing that we're going to bring is cryptographic agility. Cryptographic agility means that you can negotiate right after the join procedure in a very simple exchange, in 2 frames exchange. You can negotiate to use a different Cipher suite. Typically,
okay, back up. What is the Cipher suite?
Yeah, the Cipher suite, is a cryptographic algorithm and keys and procedures that secure the communication. That's the mathematical foundation of security.
In context of LoRaWAN, what is it? So I have, for example, I have a root key, and I need to have session keys. What does that mean in that context?
So today, LoRaWAN all LoRaWAN version use IS 128, which is a NIST, so North American standardization body, NIST approved Cipher suite. So we use IS 128. It's known to be completely secured. It's by the way known to be secure even when we have when others have cryptographic computers that try to break cryptography. That will stay secure even after that. So we use IS 128 to encrypt the messages, to verify the authenticity of the messages, and to verify that a device is legitimate on a LoRaWAN network.
Yeah.
So
that's a Cipher suite?
That's a Cipher suite.
Yeah, and so LoRaWAN 1.2 brings the ability to use different Cipher suites.
Yeah, to negotiate a different Cipher suite. So either different algorithm that can be not more secure, I wouldn't say more secure, but that would be maybe required by some, we know that some administration require IS 256, so twice as big as keys, much harder to crack. I mean, IS 128 is already impossible to crack, but it's impossible to the power of 2 to crack. But more importantly, I think it will be additional features. The first one that we will be adding is a Cipher suite that allows passive roaming. So passive roaming is when networks exchange trade frames. Passive roaming with the possibility to show a frame without revealing its content. So if you have a gateway that captures a frame which is for my network, you would be able to show me that you have received that frame. You would not show me the content of that frame, but still I would be able to verify that that frame is legitimate. Therefore, I would be ready to pay for the frame,
yeah.
so to trade for that frame. So that's the first Cipher suite that we're going to add. It's a
so back to your intro, so you said the specification basically created room in the ecosystem to specialize.
Yeah.
This would create room, for instance, to commercialize coverage to other networks.
Yeah, to commercialize coverage and to validate the concept of packet broker. Well, not validate, but to make the concept of packet broker central to this coexistence of network and. Yeah, you could actually.
So the crypto agility in 1.2 works as a sort of a plug-in system, right? So there are basically what we call anchors in the LoRaWAN 1.2 spec, which say, okay, this algorithm, not the algorithm, but the name of it's basically a pointer to anything in another specification, where the other specification defines exactly how to do the computation.
Yeah.
And so this allows us in the TC in the future also to keep the LoRaWAN 1.2 specification the same, but to innovate in a new security Cipher suite and add that and specify that. And then devices can basically, without changing the implementation of LoRaWAN 1.2, they can implement only that new Cipher suite.
So we effectively make that modular. We make modular.
Yeah. And this also happens with the original parameters.
That's right? What we did with original parameters. Yeah, we separate, make a new document so we can spin it faster, evolve faster, and make that modular.
Yeah. You mentioned already a few things about certification. What does the LoRa Alliance provide to members or non-members in terms of certification? If they want to have, they're developing a new device, is there a tool or how does that work?
So yes, there's a tool. There is a very important tool which is called the LCTT, standing for LoRa Certification Testing Tool, easy to remember. Yep. Every member gets one license of this tool, and this tool connects to a gateway. It mimics a network server from the point of view of the gateway. It controls the gateway. And so through the gateway, it sends and receives messages to a device under test and exercises all the tests that need to be validated to be sure that the device is interoperable. So everything is tested, all the MAC commands, the join procedure, the Cipher suite, as we talk. The additional features like Class B, Class C, the FROTA, multicast, everything that can be tested is tested in this tool. It also tests the regional parameters. Is this device suitable for Europe, US, etc.? So that's a complete testing.
And this is all in your desktop, right? This is on your own computer?
All you need is a gateway, which is aligned, which is capable of transmitting in this region, your device, and the LCTT. And off you go. And recently, the LoRaWAN also announced that you can self-certify. So there's an online process going on so that the LCTT is not hacked, but you can prove that the LCTT testing has been going well. Therefore, you can certify on your desk the device.
Yeah.
So that makes it much
free
faster.
for members, LoRaWAN members, for one license.
The tool is free for members.
Yeah.
The certification itself, the certification certificate is not free, of course.
No. Yeah.
But it's relatively cheap. So it's.
And once you pass your self-certification on your desk, you're pretty sure that it will pass the actual certification.
Yeah, but you don't even need to do that. You can you can self-certify and get the LoRaWAN certification, or you pre-certify using the same tool and go to an authorized test house.
Yeah, right. Yeah. For new designs, so people here in the audience are listening to this recording and they are considering developing a new LoRaWAN device. What do you recommend for them? Which version?
Yeah, so which version? Version 104, which is our last published version. It's very stable. It's been deployed already for a while. It's all network servers support the version, and interoperability is as good as it could be, and probably better than it was ever before. There is a certification program, so please use that version and certify it. You should also read the technical recommendation that the Alliance has the technical committee has put together. It's called TR007, but it's basically how to build a device, how to avoid the caveat when building a device. Those are errors that we made, or there are other myths that we are aware of, and we want people to avoid them. So we have listed all
best practices. Really?
Yeah, best practices, common mistakes, and and how to.
So this is publicly available on the LoRaWAN website.
Yeah,
so you can go to LoRaWAN.org resources and then technical specifications, and it's TR technical recommendation number 7. Yeah,
and it's about and it reads
developing LoRaWAN devices.
LoRaWAN devices.
Yeah.
So it's,
and certification.
And certification, of course.
And the LCTT is also available for 104.
LCTT is available for most versions, including 104, and for all regions.
Yeah. Okay. So in the few minutes that we have remaining, so you talked about the specification, and you said already it's a PDF of less than 100 pages. I'm also in the TC, so I know a bit of how this goes. But can you explain a bit about how does the TC work? It's a committee. How many people are in there? So what's the process?
It's a committee which is open to contributor members. So typically 30 people join the TC. The TC is like the high-level chamber, and we create subcommittees or task forces or work groups which are tasked with specific jobs. And in these task forces, any member can join. So it's a way to increase.
And so there are membership levels, right?
Yeah,
in the
LoRa
Alliance.
Yeah.
So there is sponsor level, contributor level, and adopter level, and then there is institutional for non-profit, for
non-profit
universities
and public public affairs.
Okay, so as a contributor member or as a sponsor member, you can vote in the TC. Sometimes there's a vote, right? If members disagree on something, you can say, okay, we'll vote.
It's very infrequent. That's maybe once a year. We need to have a vote to move forward. Otherwise, it's completely consensus-based, like in any.
But it's a democracy to some extent, right? It's everyone who is in the TC has one vote.
Yeah.
And depending on your membership level, you can basically join the LoRa Alliance. You don't have to go through a vetting procedure other than just pay your membership fees.
Yeah, so it's one vote per company, not not one vote per person. Some organizations have one vote per person.
Yeah.
So it's one vote per company, so there's no discrimination on the money a company has to send people. And so the subgroups, so anyone can join from adopter level, and these groups is where most of the work is done. And typically, when we create a technical recommendation or a technical spec, we start with a skeleton document, or we start from an existing one, and we discuss, amend, and adopt. We discuss, amend, and annotate based on change request. So we work in modification of small part of the document at a time, and that's how we improve the documents.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, thank you. That's really again the importance of the ecosystem, the importance of working together.
Yeah.
And specialize and innovate in the spec is fairly open in some aspects. For instance, adaptive data rate it says how to message it, how to advertise it. It doesn't explain the exact algorithm, which leaves space for people to innovate. And so and the same goes for the end device and at every level.
Yeah.
That's how it's structured.
Yeah. And I think it's also very it's a very, for us, I think it's quite important work in the sense that we have one specification, one LoRaWAN specification that is for constrained devices. So we always have to keep in mind the hardware constraints of an end device. And at the same time, it works globally, and it works for tracking cows, and it works for metering, and it's the same spec, the same network.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of concerns always, a lot of diversity also and backgrounds needed in the TC when these specifications are drafted. So that's interesting. We have meetings twice a month, 1 hour
twice a month,
online, and then,
and then
twice a year
face-to-face meeting. So please consider joining the Alliance if you're not a member already. There's a lot you can get from it, a lot of technical insights, and you can influence or innovate yourself all together. That's please consider joining.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.